All right.
Okay, all set. Hi everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I want to thank everyone for coming and for spending your Saturday afternoon with me. I know Saturdays typically are break days, but I'm really grateful that you guys are here to come and listen to my story. So I just kind of wanted to start off by saying that I began my journey in community college, and to this day, we are a very underrepresented community in medical school. For example, I do know that in my incoming class, I still haven't met anybody who's a community college student other than me. So we're really needed in medicine, and definitely, I want part of my mission to be to support other community college students who want to get into medicine and who want to get into medical school to achieve their dreams, because there's really very few of us, and we belong here just as much as anyone else. So let's start the next slide. So I think we can go back one slide. Okay, background. So I'm from Los Angeles County, and I'm actually from the San Fernando Valley. I put the little map here on the slide just for you guys to kind of see. So the purple area is the San Fernando Valley, and then the light peach area is kind of what we would consider Los Angeles to be. But this is all Los Angeles County, and so I was I was inspired to pursue medicine when I was a young girl. Many people have different stories about how they get into medicine, but for me, it was actually because I was ill. I was hospitalized when I was about 7 years old. I was rushed to the ER with like pretty severe pneumonia. I stayed for about 1 week, and now that I got older, the memories aren't very clear for me, but I definitely remember that feeling of like seeing the doctors in their white coats. And I wrote about this in my personal statement, seeing how they took care of me, seeing all the healthcare staff, really feeling inspired and feeling like these were heroes because they really saved me from from a pretty severe illness. I was in a really bad state. And then so after that, I really had this idea of like, oh, I want to be a doctor. As children, we have these dreams and we have these ideas, and sometimes they change. But for me, that stayed with me. However, my parents did not um, go to college, and they were not doctors. I don't have doctors in my family. So it was really just kind of this idea in the back of my head, this idea of a career as a little girl in the back of my head that just really stayed with me. And although I didn't know how I was going to be a doctor, I still wanted to do it. It was still a dream of mine. I had good grades in school. I was a gifted student. So my parents were really supportive, and they said, yeah, you can be a doctor. You got this. So yeah, I just went to a regular local high school. My parents are immigrants from Argentina, came here in the 90s. I have an older sister. But going back to my high school experience was really very normal. I didn't really do any community service. I didn't really take AP classes. I took one AP class, but that was because my friends were doing it. But really, in high school, we didn't really have the resources that we needed to know about different colleges and the college process, and even graduate school or medical school. And so it was kind of just high school was very just go to class and go home for me. Um, and so eventually, my junior, senior year in high school, I have to start thinking about college. And my academic advisor in high school was telling me all the options. She said, there's state college, there's community college. I didn't necessarily have all of the extra things I needed to get into a good school. And I knew that a good school wouldn't even be feasible for me to go to because of the cost associated with college. So I really decided that community college was going to be the best option for me. It was local. I knew that there was opportunities to transfer to university, and that would mean paying less tuition. And so because cost was such a factor in my mind and in my parents' mind, we decided that, I would just do community college. And that was my plan, was to do community college and then transfer to one of the UC schools. I was hoping it was going to be UCLA, just because it was nearby home. It was the closest UC school for me. And I had heard through the grapevine, UC schools had research and they had many opportunities. However, there is opportunities in all universities, in state colleges, and in private universities, of course, as well. So maybe we can go on to the next slide. So my first year at community college, I went to Los Angeles Pierce College. This was very local to me, right next to my high school. My friends from high school, they went all over the place for college. I didn't have many friends that wanted to go into medicine. So I had friends go to like the Cal State universities. And so, I was really on my own when it came to like navigating community college. My first year, I spent most of my time just in my advisor's office, at the career center, always going to counseling, trying to make sure that my academic schedule was okay. But my first year was really about getting the basic sciences done. I remember sitting down with an academic advisor, and they're just kind of like, do you know what you want to do with your life? And then I said medical school, and then they said, okay, well, medical schools require these basic science classes, so start doing them. So then we started kind of making just a short-term plan. I really knew that I had to get good grades, so I really just focused on getting A's. I began volunteering at a local hospital, and this actually ended up being clinical volunteering hours when it came time to apply. Even though some of my duties were transporting patients in wheelchairs and stocking up ED shelves and speaking to nurses, giving patients things like water or crackers, it was still considered clinical hours. So that was something I didn't know beforehand, and it is good to know now. But my first year was pretty uneventful, just was trying to get those A's, So the next slide. So my second year, it was definitely more eventful. So I got into the honors program, and I believe different community colleges have different requirements for their honors programs. But this honors program was recommended to me by an academic advisor, because she says that if you complete the honors program, then you have more of a likelihood of getting accepted into UCLA. I also became part of EOP&S. For some schools, it's called EOP. And this is like a support service center for students who are disadvantaged, or for foster students, for parenting students, for students who are low income, all the students who require more resources. This was a really great resource at my community college that I know is offered at some other community colleges. And the Career Center was also a great resource. They hosted workshops. I'd keep a lookout. Sometimes there was evening workshops for people to talk about the medical school application process. And so I really took advantage of everything I could at my community college, because that was really the only source of information that I had other than online. It's always ideal to have like a family member or relative that can be like, you have to do this, this, and this to get into school, to get to be a doctor. I didn't have that. So it was really awesome that I had the school resources, but I really had to go out there on my own and take advantage of the resources. One of the big activities I did was I was a SHPP scholar. On this slide here, we have a photo of me and my friends. We were actually on the website. I thought it was really funny. That's me all the way on the right with glasses. And so this was a great program that they have multiple sites across the US. You apply for it. Applications open November 1st. And I took a snippet of the website here, but they this program's goal is to really strengthen your application and prepare you for medical school if you are a student who identifies as being underrepresented in medicine. And so I went to the site at UCLA. We were given like public health education, lectures, academic advising, specific resources that were available in our cities. And I met so many amazing people. All those people in the photo are still my friends today. The biggest takeaway I received from this program was that we were introduced to public health and public health issues. And we learned about things called health disparities, and they contribute to this health inequality that is prevalent around patient populations that are under-resourced. And this learning about these issues in modern medicine they really resonated with me, because growing up as a Hispanic girl, growing up with my parents being immigrants from Argentina, I was aware of all of the health conditions, all the chronic health conditions that were prevalent in the Latino community, especially like heart disease and diabetes. And these things that I thought were just kind of something that happened, that our people were susceptible to, were actually not normal. And these things were like in a large part due to like this socioeconomic inequality, due to these systematic oppression that our peoples face. And there's so many like barriers that our people have to accessing health care, and in turn this this inequality makes people without resources have more chronic health issues. So this was really like something striking for me to learn that this was something that was studied, and really this was a really big issue in health, in modern health. So I took that like passion, and I was like, this is what I want to do as a future physician. I want to help my people. I want to help communities like mine who are suffering from chronic health issues that are preventable. And that was kind of where I really found like my goal and my desire in medicine. So if we go to the next slide. So my third year at community college, this is where things really started to turn for me. Really felt like I was making a lot of progress. So when I was talking about the program in the last slide, after that, I applied to become a clinical volunteer in a hospital in East Los Angeles. And the reason why I chose that community is because they serve a very underserved patient population. There are many immigrant patients there. There are patients there who are Spanish speaking, who don't have insurance. And I really kind of wanted to be part of this community. And being a Latina myself, I really wanted to be immersed in this community, be more aware of the health problems that were prevalent in this community. So I began volunteering there. I would drive there once a week from the Valley to Los Angeles. It was about an hour commute. So during this third year, I completed all of my prerequisites for medical school. I did all of my bio, my general chem, my OChem, my physics. The only thing I didn't do was biochemistry. And I really just made sure to keep high grades. I went to office hours, which was really important. I did extra credit, which is something that's not really heard of these days, but I did have the opportunity to have some classes with extra credit, which was like really amazing. And I feel like was the difference between an A- and an A for me, which was awesome. I got a part-time job, make some money. I applied to UCLA for psychobiology, and I was accepted. I believe applications were due that November to start in the next fall. And so another thing that I applied to, and I found this opportunity online. I remember research opportunities for community college students. And there is a program at UC Irvine called the Bridges to Baccalaureate Research Program. And it is for community college students who are interested in getting a PhD or an MD PhD in science, in any of the STEM fields. And at that time, I was interested in an MD PhD. I was applied and I was accepted. And right now, I honestly think that this opportunity is only open for students who want to go to UC Irvine. But at the time that I applied, it was open for students who would go to any university. But I think that the terms have changed now. But that was my first research experience. It was a 40-hour work week. It was, I got the opportunity to do some really cool research. I'll show you guys on the next slide. And then I also began shadowing at a primary care clinic in Long Beach that also served an under-resourced patient population. And so the next slide. Okay, so my third year, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about this program. So this program, Cope Health Scholars, is actually available. I believe they have sites across the West Coast, not only in California, but this is a really good program to apply to if you're interested in getting clinical volunteer hours. They put you in a hospital, you rank what hospital you want to work in, and you're able to get real patient care hours. Some of the things they train you on are taking vitals, feeding patients, bathing patients, helping patients ambulate, really important things that involve physical contact with patients. And you get to, hear amazing stories, listen to patients' lives, get to rotate through various floors, shadowing. I'm not a sponsor or anything for this program, but this was one of my most meaningful experiences on my application. So I definitely recommend looking into that if you want some sort of clinical experience. And these are clinical volunteer hours because it's not a paid position. And then if you hit next, and then next, there's just 2 photos I have.
The UCI Bridge program could that as well?
Yeah, and then I believe their photos should pop up.
Okay.
Yes. So these are my photos I took. I was able to work with mice, and we came up with our own little project. For me, I had a poster presentation through the UC Irvine research program, and eventually my faculty mentor for that program, which was just a summer program, they referred me to a principal investigator at UCLA for the upcoming semester. I told them I was going to UCLA. I would love to continue research there. And my faculty mentor said, okay, I have a contact at UCLA. Maybe you can go and have an interview with her. And I ended up working with her. So one thing that I really recommend is being proactive about your goals and desires. I really told everybody, all my professors, my mentors, I want to go to medical school. And I kind of had the thought where I was like, how can you help me? These professors, these career advisors, that's part of their job, is to help students. And so really it was important for me to be proactive in getting these resources and making connections and finding out things to do. Because more often than not, you can find so many resources just by word of mouth, through attending these amazing webinars, through listening to presentations and things like that. So yeah, just to wrap up, these were 2 good experiences that if you're in the Southern California region, I would recommend looking into. Next slide is why psychobiology at UCLA. So kind of going back to how I was accepted into UCLA, I was a mentee for the Center for Community College Partnerships program, which is a program that partners with various California community colleges and also with UC institutions, specifically UCLA. So I was a mentee for this program for 2 years. We got to tour UCLA. We got to attend workshops at UCLA. We got tips on how to apply, how to get in, the best majors, what classes you needed to take to get into these schools. And I decided to choose psychobiology. I started off wanting to do biochemistry, and then I was like, I think psychobiology is a better fit for me. And it's not a major available in every UC university or any university in general. But for me, I really enjoyed having the opportunity to have my upper division classes be a little more relaxed. And for me, psychology and sociology were something that I understood a little bit faster than maybe some of the harder subjects, such as like physical chemistry, organic chemistry. You know, some people are better at certain things than others. And for me, I really love psychology. I think it's a really beneficial subject to study when it comes to being a future physician, because you kind of want to understand the behaviors of your patients. You kind of want to understand sometimes why they do the things they do if it isn't apparent. And so I think it's good to have that background, and it's definitely great for the MCAT, for the PS section in the MCAT. And those classes were also good for the neuroscience part of the biology biochem section in the MCAT. But also I recommend going to assist.org, which is a website for California community college students. And it tells them what classes they need that will be able to transfer over to a specific university. So you put in your community college, you put in the university you want to go to, you put in the major that you want to transfer into, and then it will tell you what classes you need to take. Typically, your academic advisor should tell you about this resource, and then they will also help you out as well. But if you don't have access to an academic advisor, I really recommend this website, assist.org. Okay, the next slide. This is my junior year at UCLA. I was like, wow, I'm finally here. This is crazy. I received a lot of advice, some good, some bad. For example, I had people tell me, you know, stay humble, because you may have been the top of your class at community college, but at UCLA, everyone's at the top of their class. I've heard about like these curves, these terrible curves. I did not have that experience. Okay. If you make it into university, you're just as capable as everybody else. I've heard horror stories of people failing their first quarter. I did not have that experience. That's very rare. You need to believe in yourself. And I think I actually let myself believe in myself for once. I was like, look, I got here. I can do this. I can be like any other student here. Just because I came from community college doesn't mean that I'm less capable than any of my classmates. And I actually excelled at UCLA. You know, I kept getting good grades in my classes. I spoke with academic advisors. I continued the same habits that I learned at community college. I went to my career center at UCLA. I took advantage of whatever resources I could find. I started working in a neuroscience lab through the principal investigator contact that I had met at UC Irvine. And then I continued my clinical volunteering in East Los Angeles. I joined a small little STEM club, and I started to do non-clinical volunteering. So non-clinical volunteering is basically serving the community outside of a clinical setting. So this could be, for example, like a food drive. There's like this pillow, the fluff is flying everywhere. They're like volunteering for a food drive. And universities typically have so many volunteering opportunities. So sometimes universities have a volunteering office that you could definitely look into. And you can just have a few hours of non-clinical volunteering. Personally, I had 30 hours of non-clinical volunteering, which I think was definitely enough. And this was at the Hollywood Food Coalition, which was an organization in Hollywood that provided meals for people experiencing homelessness in the area. I was only at UCLA for one quarter, from like September through January, because the COVID-19 pandemic cut my time short. Everything transitioned online. My research transitioned online. So yeah, it was kind of just, I felt like I was back at home again, back at community college, because, you know, I was just doing my classes online and whatnot. Okay, and then the next slide. My senior year at UCLA, I decided to make myself so busy. And so I started a job with Triple CP, and this was the organization that I spoke about earlier that I was actually a mentee in. I became a mentor, and we were actually the first group of mentors to pioneer this STEM initiative in CCCP. So this was a part-time job, actually, and I was helping to mentor students from other community colleges. And so it was really important for me to give back and to be in this position, because I wanted other community college students to hear my story and hopefully gain some inspiration to see that they could do this as well. I'm not special. I am a normal person, just like everybody else. And I felt like I wanted to share all of the resources that I learned and were available to me, all the advice I learned, the mistakes I made. And so this was an excellent job for me. I loved it. I stopped doing my clinical volunteering at East Los Angeles because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We were moved to positions outside of patient floors. We had screening positions where we would just screen people who came into the hospital. And I had enough hours by then. I had about 400 clinical volunteering hours by the time I applied, which really isn't that much if you think about it. So you don't need 1,000 hours. If you have great, meaningful experiences in a few hundred hours, that is totally fine. Let's see. I did a lot of stuff my senior year. So I decided to take my MCAT my senior year, and right before I graduated. I was going to graduate June 2021, decided to take my MCAT May 1st, 2021. So I started studying around February 2021. I gave myself 3 months because I figured I'm the person who forgets things really fast, which isn't great, but I really wanted to just get it over with. For me, in my plan, it was important to take the MCAT before I submitted my primary application in June. But for some people, they can take their MCAT later on because they feel like they don't need to know their score necessarily until later on in the application process. And if you feel like you want to do that, that's totally fine too. This was just what worked for me. Some advice I have for the MCAT is, don't feel that you need to do what other people tell you to do. There's so many MCAT resources. And once you find just a few that work for you, use those. You don't have to do everything. I never did Anki, and that is so controversial, super controversial, but I've never done Anki. And I still, did pretty okay on my MCAT. Let's see. I got everything ready for my primary application, my letters of rec, did my personal statement. I was doing my activities sections, and I ended up completing my research. I did an online Zoom presentation. That was another thing I could put on my medical school application. And another thing that I wanted to put on my medical school application was to let them know that during my gap year, which is my application year, that I was going to be a medical scribe and I was going to get more hours. So I made sure to apply to Scribe America as soon as I could so that I could start working as soon as possible so that I could at least put that in my application. So that's kind of a little trick to have if you're thinking about what you want to do in your gap year, if it's possible that you can apply early enough that you can stick it into your primary, I think that's a really good thing to have, because that was showing admissions that I had more clinical hours that I was wanting to do. And I do want to talk about Scribe America. I really recommend it. I believe they have locations all across the US. If you want to be a medical scribe, it's amazing. Sometimes you are placed into harder clinical settings like the ER. I was luckily placed into more relaxing clinical settings, where my shifts were like 9 to 5. However, I know sometimes in the ER, your shifts can be like graveyard shifts. So it just kind of depends. But I think it's a really great experience to put and to have as well. We'll do the next slide. So my MCAT, I wanted to be really, transparent today, tell you guys about my MCAT. I ended up getting a 508. So that's about a 71st percentile. I was really reaching for 80th percentile, but things happen. So the resources that I used for my MCAT were, the most important was the AAMC Fee Assistance Program. And this is a program for students to apply to who would like a monetary support for MCAT resources. And this allowed me to get the AAMC Q banks, all the AAMC official material for free. So it was the question banks, the section banks, the practice exams. Those were all free for me. And then you also get 20 free medical schools to apply to during your application. And that was awesome because each school is like around $100 or whatnot.
I would just add the fee assistant is around $3,000. So the monetary cost of it. So it's a pretty big thing. If you qualify for it, make sure you apply.
Yeah, so you can save $3,000. Yeah, that's amazing. Oh yeah. So I applied and I was accepted. So I'm super happy about that. I used UWorld really for content review. If there was a subject I really needed more review with, I would supplement it with Khan Academy. I did a Jack Weston daily course passage, like only one a day. And here's my score breakdown. You guys can kind of see my stronger suit was the psych soc section. However, I did my best. And like I said earlier, I didn't do Anki. The way that I would review every day to keep everything that I memorized in my brain was I would use the MCAT review sheet found on Reddit. And this was based on the Mile Down Anki deck. So it was just kind of like the Anki material, but in like an 80-page PDF format that I loved better. That was my preference. But yeah, the MCAT was hard. At the time, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. So just know that it's hard and it's normal to feel like it is overwhelming, because it is overwhelming. But once you do it, it's done and you don't have to look at it ever again. We'll go to the next slide. So this is my last slide. I wanted to also be transparent, talk about my cycle results. So I mentioned I did get a 508 MCAT, and that was below the median for many schools. UCSF, their median MCAT is a 518. I was way below that, but it's important to show that I had many other factors in my application. So I applied to about 25 schools. I submitted my application early, which is something I really, really recommend. Submit early, please. So you get the first interview spots. You really do. You get the first interview spots. If you submit later, you're competing for less spots. So it just makes sense. Try to submit as early as possible. Get your secondaries in within 2 to 3 weeks, if possible. And then that whole year, you're just going to be going through the process. It's going to be hard. I hope that you guys can have a support system. If not, please reach out to me. I reached out to so many people to look over my secondaries, to help me with interview. And I found these people on websites like Instagram I found these people just through looking up pre-med mentors online and seeing the free resources available to me. And, there's so many people that want to help. And I definitely really am grateful to those people who helped me get through this cycle. So just to kind of show you guys, I was accepted into, I don't know, this is 10 schools. And I ended up choosing UCSF because they're incredible. And I believe that I had the best mission fit for them. They're all about social justice and health equity in medicine. That's really my passion. But I turned down Georgetown. I turned down Albany Medical College. I turned down California University of Science and Medicine. And I turned down UC Riverside, UCLA Drew, and then I was waitlisted for UC Irvine, Kaiser, and UC Davis. So in the end, I don't know if they would have accepted me because I just was like, I'm going to UCSF. I don't even want to hear if they would have accepted me or not. But yeah, so that was like really my overall journey. And if we go to the next slide. I know it was a lot of information. It was like my whole life story condensed, but I really want to leave it off with that. Like I said earlier, I'm just a normal person. And for me, what worked for me was just taking advantage of everything I could, looking up online, talking to advisors, meeting people, trying to make connections, really because I wanted to go to medical school. And since my family wasn't there to guide me, I really used my community and my school and every other resource I could. So thank you guys for listening. And if you have any questions, please feel free to
Yeah,
ask them.
they're in the Q&A section, so I'm just gonna run them off. Can you tell me more about your orthoscribe experience? Did you take medical terminology class prior to the job?
Okay. Yeah, so for the orthoscribe experience, that was awesome. It was just by pure randomness that I was placed into orthopedic surgery. Scribe America will place you into whatever hospital or clinic system needs more workers. So it was just completely random. It was amazing. I did not need a medical terminology class. The Scribe America application was very basic. All you need to do is be able to type fast. They give you a typing test, and then you just upload your resume. It's pretty random where you get placed again. For example, if you live in a bigger city, there is more opportunities to get placed in more locations. However, there are times where you may not get hired because there's just no location around that is hiring new scribes. But I did not take medical terminology. I learned medical terminology on the job.
Yeah, the biggest thing about scribes is I've seen them work in the ER, and I'm not a scribe myself, so but it's just that you need to be someone who is willing to learn. You learn a lot. It's kind of like trial by fire. They want you to be able to take these content fast and input it, and that's basically all it is. And I think most of people that have been growing up with computers, if you could type fast, I think what's the minimum cut? I don't know the minimum cutoff is, but you definitely type fast. So um this is like a couple of questions around the MCAT, and so if you were able to do this to the MCAT, if you were going to study for the MCAT again, would there be any resources or strategies that you would have used, or what would you do differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. I honestly feel like if I had spent an extra month, I could have done well. So I think the biggest indicator of how you're going to do on the MCAT is going to be those AAMC practice exams. There's four, I believe. Last year there was four. And those were crazy predictors of how I was going to do. My scores were like four, 504, 506, 508, 506, and I got a 508. So when I tell you those are pretty accurate for the most part, I would save those for the last month of your MCAT date because those are going, and do one each Sunday, like preparing for the exam, or each Saturday, because those are going to be really good indicators of how you're going to do. Um, I would say UWorld was the best resource I could ever have. Um, but when I was doing the UWorld, I was getting like 60% right. So can you imagine if you actually knew the material and were getting like 80, 90% right, you would probably get a really, really high score on the MCAT. So I think UWorld was the most important resource other than the official AAMC material.
And then another question, would you share your schedule and strategy for each section? I think
Yeah, so that's a great question. I want to apologize. After I took the MCAT and got my score, I deleted everything about the MCAT. I deleted everything on my computer. It's like I don't want to look at this again. But let's see, my schedule. Well, during when I was taking the MCAT, I was studying part-time. I was doing UCLA online. Like I was working part-time, like really what works best for you. But I think if you're able to do 4 to 6 hours a day for 4 months, that's probably good. But if you want to do something more long term, like 6 months, maybe you can do like 4 hours a day. It's so individual. It's like it's so there's not one answer. I wish there was one answer. And test companies will lie to you and say that there is, but there isn't. You really just have to find what works best for you.
um the other question was, I think that was all the M. Oh, is the UWorld free and the website? I put the website in the chat, and is UWorld free?
So UWorld is not free. I think I paid about $250 for a 3 or 4 month subscription. But you know what? It's worth it. Like if you're going to spend money on something, it should be UWorld. It should not be more Blueprint. MCAT practice exams, just it should be on UWorld if you're going to spend money.
Yeah, and then the other thing is UWorld, is it the other question was, is there sections? Do they break it down? Do they review the questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So UWorld will test you in sections, and they'll give you a question that is formatted just like an MCAT question will be formatted. And then you pick your answer, and then immediately it tells you what the correct answer was, and it offers an explanation for every answer. I would definitely look more into UWorld online if you have questions about UWorld. I know there's some YouTubers, pre-medical YouTubers who talk about UWorld, and I just think it's such a great resource. But yes, it does test every single section, BB, CP, even there's cars on UWorld and PS.
Yeah, and you could, if you go on the website, because neither Jennifer or I are representatives or know about it, but I know that you could get a 7-day access for free, and you could play with 100 questions, and you don't even need to use your credit card. So um, try it out for yourself. It works. Some people, rave about it. Some people don't like it. So it all depends on it all depends on how you study and what material works for you. The next question was, is research needed to apply to medical school?
So the answer is no. There's no hard research requirement for any medical schools that I know of. But is it good to have? I think it is. I think that if you have really good, strong experiences without research, I don't think you're in a bad place. However, research can really only boost your application. The AAMC put out some statistics in 2018 or whatnot, and they kind of see what all applicants apply with to the medical schools, and something like more than like 95% of applicants had some sort of research experience. But research can be found pretty much anywhere. You don't just have to look at universities. You can look at like labs. Like I would just do research online. Also, it does not have to be like basic science research. You can do like public health research, community research, psychology research. There's so many like small research opportunities that there isn't like a hard rule for research.
Yeah, there's also sociology research, there's chart review, there is I think if you were a first or second year community college student, and if you think that research is so far away, there are a lot of opportunities out there, but you're going to have to go look for them. But there is a lot of opportunities out there. If you're someone who's post-bac and is ready to apply, you may not be able to get that. But if you're first or second year, there's a lot of opportunities out there. The other question was, can you talk about the general GPA and science GPA and what's the difference?
Sure. Yeah. Going back to the research really quick, I do know that if you look up research opportunities for community college students on Google, you will find some through the NIH website. Okay. And then talking about science GPA versus regular GPA. So both my science GPA and regular GPA were very high. They were very similar. So the way that the medical school application works is that they only count science as like bio, chem, physics, and a very few others. If you actually look up the AAMC BCPM GPA, that's what your science GPA is. It's called your BCPM GPA. So it's your biology, chemistry, physics, and math. So those go into your science GPA. Everything else goes into your non-science GPA. So I remember things like anthropology, all those social sciences are not part of your BCPM GPA, which is what the AAMC uses for MD medical schools. It might be different for DO medical schools. I did not apply DO. I do recommend it. I don't know why I didn't apply. The truth is, I felt like I could get in somewhere possibly because I felt like I was pretty confident about my application. But looking back, like apply DO, please. Yeah.
Very cool. These are a couple questions about the interview. And so first one is, can you share your experience with interviews at the various UC schools?
I see that question. Thanks for that. So I would like to say about that my interview season was super unique because of the COVID pandemic. It was all online, which was really not something that ever happened before. You know, interviews are typically in person. You fly out to the school or you drive to the school and you do the interview in person. Because it was online, it was, so they still did MMI. So they'll like put you in a breakout room and like ask you a scenario question or a traditional question. Every school has a different way of doing interviews. They will let you know beforehand if the interview is going to be MMI style, where you're presented with scenarios and you have some time to answer, or if it's going to be a traditional interview where they just ask you questions such as, tell me about yourself, or if it's a mix. For all of the schools except Georgetown that I applied to, it was a mix. It was MMI sprinkled in with some like traditional questions, but it was MMI style. The interviewers can be anybody. It could be faculty, it could be students, it could be community leaders, it could really be anybody. But for those UC schools, they're very similar. It was all Zoom, MMI style. The way that I prepared was I looked up just common interview questions on Google, and I would practice doing MMI style interviews with YouTube videos. I would record myself. I learned how to look into the camera, which was really important. However, you can take some of these tools to in-person interviews as well. For this current application cycle, I don't know if it's still virtual or in person, but I am available to do interview prep for free. If any of you are interested, you can reach out to me at Med with Jen on my Instagram. I have no problem sharing my like tips and whatnot, but we are not allowed to share like specific interview questions, but definitely it can help with like tips and stuff.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what MMI is?
Sure. MMI is a type of interview where they present you with scenarios. You are given 2 or so minutes to read the scenario, and you have about 1 or 2 minutes to prepare for the scenario, prepare your answer, and then about 6 to 8 minutes, depending on the school, to answer. And you can receive follow-up questions during that time period as well. For example, a question is like something you can practice is, you know, dang, you know, what would you do if your patient um, made a comment about your tattoos, or what would you do if a patient was racist, or whatever, what's so not, things that are supposed to represent real life situations that could happen. They test ethics, they test communication, they test problem solving, they test teamwork. And there's kind of like there's isn't no one answer to how to answer these questions, but there is a framework that you can use. So things like that, it's very, very challenging, but if you practice, you can do really well.
Very cool. The other question, this is kind of a longer one. And so this is basically this person was advised not to take courses at community college, and they were thinking about taking some of their prereqs at a community college instead of a 4-year. And there's this rumor about the community colleges not being as rigorous, or what the perception would be. And Jennifer?
I see that question. So that question's a little bit complicated because if if the class is available at your university, then there could be some confusion as to why aren't you taking it at your university? Why are you taking it at community college instead? You know what? That would be a really great question for the admissions representative. And a good resource for all of you guys to know is that medical schools, they have an admissions email, and this is public knowledge on their website that you can email and ask anything you want. If you want to make a junk email just to ask all of those questions, you can, and they will answer you. If you have a dream school, then and your answer is not on that school's website, please email their admissions office and they will help you.
Yeah, so we had 15 deans of admission that came and spoke this past year. And yes, if you're like Jennifer, who started out at community college, and I think you took all your prereqs at a community college, right?
I did.
Yep, it's absolutely fine. If you have gone to college and got a bachelor's in French and decided to go back and do a post-bac, and you took all your prereqs at a community college, that's fine too. The only thing that they would show red flags if, let's say, at a high school, you went to UCLA and you decided to take all of your general chemistry, OChem, physics, and all of those at the same time at Santa Monica College while you're going to UCLA. And that's a no-no, because they will know that you are trying to game some sort of system. And so that's kind of the big no-no. This was told by the UCLA Dean of Admission. She actually talked about her experience where she was doing a post-bac. She went to Cal State Northridge and was doing a master's, and took a couple of classes, because and so basically you can't do that system. But she was also, after she graduated, she took a couple of her courses at a couple of the JCs down in Southern California. So in that sense, you can't game that system. So and you could go listen to all of the deans of admissions that we've had there on our YouTube channel. And also, I know our media team has made 1 minute snippets of asking these questions and they posted it both on social media and on Instagram. So the other question is, oh, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I completely agree with that. That sounds like that's right.
How did you, are you reading any books?
Yeah, are you reading any books? I'm just reading books for fun now. Did I read books in undergrad? I would read like romance novels, like fantasy novels. Is there any books where I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to read? There's one, I can't remember. um, oh, it's by Paul Kalanthi. Oh, I believe it's called, okay, When Breath Becomes Air. It is a story of a neurosurgeon talking about it's kind of like a diary of his life. It's not supposed to be educational. I think it's a really great book, though. Yeah,
Very sad book.
sad book.
Yeah, his neurosurgeon who's finishing his residency and finds out that he has brain tumor and he ends up passing away. But and his wife finishing the book. Did you apply to prime programs and all the UCs you applied to? I've heard they're extremely competitive. Um, and would I miss the chance of being accepted if I don't apply to those programs?
I recommend if you are underrepresented in medicine to apply to prime programs. Prime programs are really built for us because who is more likely to give back to an underserved community other than an underserved person, like an underserved member of that community? So I feel like definitely apply to the prime programs if you feel like you are interested in that and you want your passion revolves around that. All the prime programs at the UCs have a similar mission of overall goal to provide care to these communities, and it's not extra. So what you do is you apply to the UC schools on your primary application, and in your secondary application is when they ask you, would you want to be considered for prime? And you just have to maybe do a few extra essays uh, to apply to that, but it doesn't cost extra. And the way that prime programs work actually is you have to be accepted into the school first to be considered for prime. So it's like you got to be accepted into the school first and then be accepted into prime, and that's for every UC. So definitely, if that's your mission, if you feel like you really resonate with the prime mission, apply. I love it. I do think that for each prime program at the UCs, they are more lenient on GPA and MCAT because at the end of the day, their number one priority is to recruit students who want to serve those communities. So if you have a lower MCAT or a lower GPA, don't be shy. Please apply to the prime programs. Yes.
The other thing is, when did you start receiving acceptances for medical school? I would say early, but that's just my guess.
Yeah. So I applied early. I believe applications open for submission like May 31st, and I submitted the week after. But it takes a few weeks to process an application, which means that the AAMC organization is going to just check your application, make sure that you got your grades in. It's really a waste of time, but it is what it is. And then once they process your application, then it is sent to the medical schools. Mine was sent to medical schools in July, and that's around the earliest that they can be sent to medical schools, like late June, early July. So I was part of the initial batch I would say like one of the first batches of applications sent to medical schools. And then I received my first interview invite around August. The first interview was September. My first acceptance was beginning of November. So if you apply early, you have the best chances. You really, really do. But I received acceptances throughout November, December, and January. But that's because I applied early. If you applied a little later, like July, August, or August, then you may receive acceptances all the way up until March, April.
How did you cope for while waiting to hear from schools? Um, how did you cope while you were waiting?
Distraction. That is the best way to cope for me because I would, finish an interview and then I'm like, oh my God, how did I do? You know, when you have adrenaline and then your adrenaline's over and then you don't remember anything? That was me. So I just kind of tried to stay positive, really relied on my spirituality and really relied on thinking that if it's fate, then it's fate, and whatever the decision is, it was meant to be, because at the end of the day, did I try my best? Yes. So whatever is meant to be will be. That was my way of thinking, but a real answer would be keep yourself busy, spend time with your family, spend time with your friends. I found support through Student Doctor Network and Reddit. We would just be posting in the forums like, "Oh my gosh, have you guys heard back yet?" That was a little bit toxic because nobody has heard back yet, and you're all just kind of like, worried. But it is nice to feel like you're not alone and you're in this with other people. But you get through it. Life goes on, and you just get through it, and it's gonna be okay.
So what this is the last one is the study tips you give to community college students to being a summa cum laude. And this is like a very longer conversation, but if you could just give one quick tip. And then we also had somebody who is actually on our board, and she went from community college to UCLA, and she was also summa cum laude um, at UCLA, and she's actually in the application poll right now. And just
Nice.
to tell you that what a summa cum laude is, if you don't know what that is, it's anybody that has a GPA that is, I think, higher than 3.9 something, I think it is. So it's very high. So anybody that's summa cum laude, they're really smart. You want to be their friend. You want to get help from them.
Yeah. So really it's kind of like the question is like how did you get good grades? How did you study? So I was always honest with myself. Do I know the material? Yes. Do I know the material? No, I don't. Gotta go study. So really be honest with yourself. Don't lie to yourself. Do you honestly get it? And so another thing, take advantage of tutors. At my community college, there was a tutoring center, and I struggled with calculus a lot. I was there all the time. Take advantage of your professor's office hours. Your TAs sometimes will have office hours as well. Take advantage of those. And another thing, if you really aren't getting the information, I think it's important to be honest with your professors and your TAs. If you feel comfortable, really be honest with them and let them know that you're trying. See if they will be willing to give you extra credit. I don't know if I've never done this at UCLA, but I do know at my community college, like I mentioned, there was extra credit opportunities, and I feel like that's kind of unheard of in college, but there was, and like I said, that really helped me out. So just be honest with your professors. Go to office hours, do tutoring through your school. Never pay for tutoring because your school will have free tutoring, and take the time to study. With your friends. If you don't want to be alone, you guys can just study next to each other. Um, ask for help. It's the biggest thing. Ask for help if you need it.
Yeah, and I put the link from Madeline's talk. She did almost a 2 hour talk about studying at community college and at the UC. Um, Actually, we promised you to go, and it's 12:11. So um, I'm gonna let you go. There was one question. It was if you had a backup plan, and kind of knowing you, I would say no, but if you want to answer that, if you didn't get in.
Yeah, yeah, I can finish this question. So did I have a backup plan? So when you ask a pre-med this, they're gonna say the backup plan is to just apply again. And yeah, so that was my idea. If I did not get accepted anywhere, then I would take that year to improve my application and apply again. Because at the end of the day, if this is really what you want to do, you can apply again. I believe that you get about for example, for the MCAT, you get about like 7 lifetime retries. But for medical schools, if you need to apply again for a year, that's normal. And they even ask you in your secondaries sometimes, are you a reapplicant? Because it's common and people learn from their mistakes. And yeah, but another good tip would be when you're thinking about applying is asking maybe if you have a pre-med resource center at your school, like, am I ready? Looking at everything you have done, taking a good hard look at your application, being honest with yourself, like, is this a quality application? Like, am I really showcasing everything I've done and who I am? And if you don't think you are yet, then wait another year. But for me, I really felt like, you know what, I'm ready. And this application really does show everything I've done. And it ended up working out. So yeah, like I said, if you need somebody to ask, am I ready? I would be happy to do that. So just send me a DM on Instagram at Med with Jen.
Very cool. Well, Jen, we kept you here longer than you were supposed to be. Thank you